The livestream had 43,000 viewers. Amara Okoye stood at the altar in a gown that cost more than most people's cars, her fingers trembling slightly around a bouquet of white orchids. The cathedral's vaulted ceiling stretched above her like the ribs of some ancient beast, stained glass filtering afternoon light into fractured rainbows across marble floors. Each polished tile gleamed like a shard of possibility, or a fragment of something about to shatter. 300 guests, 12 cameras, one groom who hadn't looked her in the eye since she'd walked down the aisle. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button. This story is about to get wild. And drop a comment telling me if you do what she's about to do. Daniel Cole stood across from her in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, jaw tight, eyes flickering toward the exit every few seconds. Amara had noticed it during rehearsal yesterday. She'd noticed it this morning when he'd canceled their private breakfast, claiming urgent business calls. She'd noticed it 30 seconds ago when the priest asked if anyone objected and Daniel had flinched like someone had fired a gun. Her stomach had been ice since she'd arrived, cold, hard, wrong. But she'd built her entire PR consultancy on reading rooms, managing crises, controlling narratives. So she'd smiled. She'd held her position. She'd ignored every screaming instinct. The priest cleared his throat. "Daniel Cole, do you take this woman?" "No." The word dropped into the cathedral like a stone into still water. Silence, complete and total. Then Daniel reached up, removed the wedding band from his palm, then held it between two fingers like it burned him. "I can't marry someone who's been lying to me," he said, and his voice carried, amplified by the lapel mic he'd insisted on for the live stream, for their special moment, for the followers and the prestige and the image he'd been so desperate to project. Amara's vision tunneled. The flowers slipped from her grip, orchids scattering across white marble like bones. Her breath caught, sharp, painful, adrenaline slamming through her veins so hard her ears rang. "Daniel, you chose ambition over loyalty," he continued, and there was something rehearsed in his delivery, something scripted. "You chose your career over us. You chose everything except the truth." Gasps rippled through the pews. Phones lifted. Someone's grandmother started crying. Amara's mother stood halfway up, then sat back down, trapped between cultural propriety and maternal instinct. Daniel turned. He walked, down the aisle, past rows of stunned faces, past the cameras still streaming live to 43,000 people. Past Amara, who stood frozen, every chandelier above her glimmering like broken glass, like her carefully constructed future splintering in real time. She moved to follow him. Some instinct, some desperate need to understand. A hand caught her wrist. Gentle, firm. "Don't." The voice was male, calm, completely unshaken by the chaos erupting around them. Amara turned. The man who'd stopped her was Korean, perhaps early 30s, with the kind of face that fashion photographers probably beg to shoot. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Black hair styled with precise casualness. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and he wore it the way some men wore armor. She'd never seen him before in her life. "Let go of me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Not yet," he said. Then he stepped forward, past her, addressing the cathedral at large. His voice carried without amplification, cutting through whispers and shock and the distant sound of Daniel's footsteps retreating. "If a man abandons a woman publicly," he said, "the disgrace is his, not hers." Every head swiveled toward him. He moved with deliberate calm to the center of the altar, withdrawing a cream-colored document from inside his jacket. He presented it to the priest with a slight bow. "I have a civil marriage license," he said. "Signed, notarized, valid as of 11 o'clock this morning." The priest stared at the document like it might explode. What is this?" "A legal contract," the stranger said. His thumb pressed against the paper's edge. A tiny tell, the only indication he might not be as composed as he appeared. "Permitting me to marry in this venue at this time, with a willing partner. The registrar is an acquaintance who understands extraordinary circumstances." Then he turned to Amara. The cathedral held its breath. "I would like," he said quietly, "to marry you instead." Amara's brain short-circuited. Her chest ached, adrenaline still thrumming through her like electricity. Yet somehow, impossibly, a sliver of calculation was trying to surface through the shock. "I'm sorry," she managed. "What?" "You are free to say no," the man said, and his tone was so even, so controlled, that it somehow anchored her spinning thoughts. "But if you walk out of here alone, He gestured slightly toward the cameras, the phones, the 300 witnesses. "We'll rewrite today for you. They'll make you the villain or the victim, neither of which you deserve to be." The priest had opened the document, scanning it with increasing confusion. "Sir, this is highly irregular." "But legal," the stranger said. "I checked." Amara's hands were shaking. She pressed them against the heavy silk of her dress. "Who are you?" "My name is Jamin Park." He said it simply, like he was introducing himself at a networking event. "I run an international import-export business. I have interests in luxury hospitality and gaming. And I was invited to this wedding by Marcus Chen from the mayor's office." Amara remembered signing Marcus's name onto the guest list. Daniel's contact. Some political connection he'd been cultivating, along with several other names Daniel had insisted on. People she'd never met. People from business circles he'd refused to explain. "That doesn't explain—" "I had business at City Hall this morning," Jamin continued, and something flickered in his eyes, briefly, almost imperceptibly, before his composure settled back into place. "The civil registrar is an acquaintance. When certain financial irregularities came to light regarding your former fiancé, I suspected today might not proceed as planned." Former fiancé. He'd already relegated Daniel to past tense. "What irregularities?" Amara demanded. "Daniel owes significant money to a private gaming syndicate," Jamin said, and there was something darker in his tone now. "He's been underwater for 6 months. This morning, his creditors applied pressure. I believe that pressure influenced his decision." Somewhere in the pews, someone was definitely recording this. Her world had combusted in the span of 5 minutes. "You're saying because of gambling debts?" "I'm saying he panicked," Jamin said. "And he chose to humiliate you rather than face his own failures." The cathedral had gone so quiet Amara could hear her own heartbeat. If she said no, if she walked out, headlines wrote themselves in her mind. PR exec dumped at altar. Career built on image can't save her own. She'd lose clients, lose credibility, spend months rebuilding her reputation. Or she could control the narrative right now. Amara lifted her chin, looked directly into Jamin Park's dark, steady eyes and said, "If I do this, it's not to hide. It's because I choose not to be humiliated." Something that might have been respect crossed his face. "Understood," he said. She turned to the priest. "The license is legal?" Yes, technically, but..." "Then marry us." The priest looked desperately toward Amara's parents, who were too shocked to intervene. "I need consent from both parties," he finally managed. "You have mine," Amara said. "And mine," Jamin added. The priest cleared his throat. "Very well. Do you, Jamin Park, take Amara Okoye to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Jamin said, and his voice was steady, but Amara caught the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And do you, Amara Okoye, take Jamin Park to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Amara's voice came out stronger than she expected. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, and, apparently, by this extremely unusual civil license, I pronounce you husband and wife." Silence. Then Jamin stepped closer, gave her a look that clearly asked permission, and when she nodded slightly, he kissed her. Brief, respectful, almost formal, but binding. When they separated, Amara turned to face the congregation and the cameras as a married woman to a man whose last name she'd learned 3 minutes ago. The cathedral erupted. Outside, through the massive doors, she could already see phones being raised, notifications flooding across the city, across the world. 43,000 eyes multiplying by the second. The car that collected them was a black Mercedes S-Class, with windows so tinted Amara couldn't see through them from the inside. The driver said nothing. The interior smelled like leather and sandalwood. Jae-min sat beside her in silence, giving her space, not touching her despite the rings now circling both their fingers. Amara stared at her hands. They were still trembling. The engagement ring Daniel had given her, 2 carats, princess cut, sat next to a simple platinum band that Jae-min had somehow produced during the ceremony. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My residence," Jae-min said. "You'll be safe there. We can talk. You can leave if you decide you want to dissolve this immediately." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening for just a moment before he silenced it and slipped it back into his pocket. "Can we just dissolve it?" "There are always options," he said. His fingers drummed once against his knee before going still. "Though it becomes more complicated legally once certain elements are alleged in public record." Amara pulled out her phone. 87 missed calls, 236 text messages. She opened Twitter. #wedding shock was trending #1 worldwide. A headline flashed, "Jilted bride marries stranger. Korean businessman says, 'I'll take her.'" And she could feel her world twisting under the weight of those eyes, now multiplied to hundreds of thousands. One tweet had 15,000 retweets. That Korean man really said, "I'll take her," and became every woman's fantasy in 30 seconds. Amara locked her phone before she could read more. The car pulled up to a building that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine, all glass and steel, stretching 40 stories toward a darkening sky. Security waved them through without question. The elevator required a key card and thumbprint scan. It opened directly into a penthouse that made Amara's apartment look like a college dorm. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, art that was probably worth more than her car. An older Korean woman in elegant casual wear approached them. "Madam Hyejin," Jae-min said. "This is Amara. She'll be staying here." "Of course," the woman said. Her English carried a slight accent, but her tone was warm. "Welcome." She moved toward Amara with gentle efficiency, reaching up to help remove the veil still pinned in Amara's hair. That's when it hit. The full weight of the day crashed through whatever shock barrier had been holding it back. Amara's knees buckled. Madam Hyejin caught her, guided her to a sofa. Amara's breath came in sharp gasps, makeup streaking down her face in hot trails. Her whole body shook. Violent tremors, rage and confusion and grief for a future that had been stolen. Jae-min stood several feet away, his hands in his pockets, shoulders tense, deliberately not looking at her directly, giving her privacy even while staying close, just waiting. When the shaking finally subsided, Madam Hyejin pressed a glass of water into Amara's hands. "You are safe here," she said quietly. "Whatever comes next, you are safe." Amara drank, breathed, felt her pulse slowly returning to normal. "I need to make a statement," she said. "Control the narrative before..." "Before what?" Jae-min asked. "Before people speculate?" "They're already speculating. Let them. You don't owe anyone an explanation tonight." Before Amara could argue, Jae-min's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, answered. "Yes?" A pause. His expression shifted to something darker. "When?" Another pause. "Lock it down. I'm coming down." He hung up. "What happened?" Amara asked. "Security flagged unusual activity in the building," he said carefully. "Probably nothing, but I need to check." "What kind of activity?" "Someone tried to access the parking garage with credentials that shouldn't exist," he said. "Stay here with Madam Hyejin. I'll be back in 10 minutes. He left before she could question further. Madam Hyejin sat beside her. "You have questions," she said. Ask them." "How long have you worked for him?" 12 years. Since he was 22 and inherited his father's empire." "His father?" "Died when Jae-min was 20. Heart attack. Left him a complicated business, legitimate import-export, and questionable everything else." Madam Hyejin poured tea with practiced hands. Jamin spent 5 years cleaning it up, making it legal where he could. But not completely legal. Nothing is completely legal when you operate internationally, Madam Heejin replied. But he tries. He keeps violence to a minimum. He doesn't traffic people or drugs. Is he perfect? No. Is he better than most men in his position? Yes. Why are you telling me this? Because you'll hear worse from others, the woman said. And I want you to have context before the rumors start. When Jae-min returned 15 minutes later, his expression was controlled, but Amara noticed tension in his shoulders. Everything okay? She asked. False alarm, he said. But we're increasing security protocols anyway. His phone buzzed again. He silenced it without looking. Amara noticed. Amara didn't sleep. She lay in a bed wearing borrowed silk pajamas, staring at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face. The moment he'd removed the ring, the way he'd walked away. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Finally, at 2 a.m., she opened her messages. Her mother. Call me. Now. Her best friend Monica. Girl, what the actual hell? Are you safe? Call me when you can. And Daniel. 17 messages. Amara, please, I can explain everything. They were threatening me. You married him? Do you know who he is? He's dangerous. I'm outside. Let me up. Your husband had me removed by armed men. This isn't over. Amara's hands shook as she set the phone down. A soft knock on her door. Come in, she said. Madam Hyejin entered with tea. I thought you might be awake. Chamomile. It helps. She sat on the edge of the bed. What does he want from me? Amara asked quietly. I don't think he knows yet, Madam Hyejin said. I've never seen him make an impulsive decision before. Ever. That man plans breakfast 3 days in advance. And then you stood at that altar and he just decided. It scared me a little. That doesn't make sense. Love rarely does. This isn't love, Amara said quickly. Give it time, Madam Hyejin said. You might be surprised. At 6 a.m., Amara gave up on sleep. She found Jae-min already awake at the dining table with coffee and a laptop. He looked up when she entered. Dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept either. Good morning, he said. Coffee? Please. He poured her a cup with cream and sugar on the side. We need to talk, she said. Yes. Who else knows about Daniel owing you money? My security team, my legal counsel, and now you. Daniel knows you own the syndicate he owes? He found out yesterday morning. That's why he ran. Amara processed that. You told him. No, Jamin said, his jaw tightening. One of my board members did. As a pressure tactic. It backfired. So I'm collateral damage in a business operation. No, Jamin said, his voice sharpening. You were never part of the business operation. When I realized Daniel was going to humiliate you publicly, I intervened. Not strategically. Personally. Why? He was quiet for a moment, fingers drumming once against his cup. Because 6 months ago, he finally said, you refused a bribe. Amara's head snapped up. The Meridian import situation. You were handling PR for their corruption investigation. Someone offered you $50,000 to bury certain documents. You reported them instead. She remembered. A mid-level executive trying to buy her silence. How do you know about that? Because Meridian was laundering money through Daniel's investment firm, Jamin said. I was tracking it, and when I saw you refuse that bribe when you needed money, I noticed you. The air suddenly felt thinner. You've been watching me? Investigating, he corrected, an edge of frustration in his voice before he smoothed it away. Daniel's firm was flagged months ago. You were collateral research, but you became interesting when you proved you couldn't be bought. Before Amara could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold. What? Amara asked. Daniel gave an interview to Channel 7. It's airing in 20 minutes. He turned his laptop toward her. The headline, Jilted Groom Speaks. She married a criminal. Amara's stomach dropped. Turn it on, she said. Daniel looked haggard on camera. Red-rimmed eyes, disheveled hair, the picture of a broken man. I had to speak out, Daniel said, voice cracking. I couldn't let Amara throw her life away without trying to warn her. Warn her about what? The man she married, Jae-min Park. He runs underground gambling operations. He has ties to organized crime. He's dangerous. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth, Daniel insisted. He lured Amara into that marriage, manipulated her when she was vulnerable. Beside her, Jae-min's hand had curled into a fist. She watched tension spread up his arm before he deliberately forced his fingers to relax. Jae-min closed the laptop with controlled precision. Well, he said calmly, that's unfortunate. He just called you a criminal on live television. Anyone with resources will find out he owes money to a gambling syndicate within hours, Jae-min said. He's projecting his guilt onto me. It won't hold. You don't know that. I know how media cycles work. So do you. He stood. You're a PR expert. What would you advise a client? Amara's brain switched modes. Control the narrative. Get ahead of the story. Present our version before they can twist it further. So let's do that. I'll hire your firm to represent me, Jae-min said. Official client relationship. You handle my PR through this. It gives you professional distance and puts you back in control. It was brilliant, and exactly what she would have suggested. Fine, she said, but I need full disclosure. Everything. Agreed. His phone rang. He answered, his expression shifting. When? A pause. His free hand pressed flat against the table, knuckles whitening. Lock down the building. He hung up. What happened? Someone tried to access the parking garage. They had credentials that shouldn't exist. Security stopped them, but... He paused. We need to leave. Now. Before Amara could ask why, Madame Hyejin appeared, face tense. Sir, cameras show 2 vehicles circling the block. Neither registered to residents. 3 passes in 10 minutes. Who are they? Amara demanded. Probably reporters, Jae-min said, but his tone said otherwise. Or people from my organization who disagree with my decision to marry you. The words hung in the air. You said I'd be safe here. You are safe. But we need to move you somewhere more secure while I handle this. He paused. I should have anticipated they'd move this quickly. Get me out of here, Amara said. Now! They left through the service elevator. Within minutes, 2 black SUVs idled in the underground garage. 4 men in dark suits moved with military precision. One wore an earpiece, his hand resting on something concealed beneath his jacket. One opened the rear door for Amara. She hesitated. Trust me, Jae-min said quietly, his hand light on her lower back. Please. She got in. The convoy moved immediately. Smooth, coordinated. Amara watched the garage recede through tinted windows, heart hammering. Where are we going? Safe house, 20 minutes outside the city. Private property. The SUV ahead signaled left. Their driver followed. City streets blurred past. Amara's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She showed Jae-min. Don't answer, he said immediately. It stopped. 30 seconds later, a text came through. Tell your husband he made a mistake. Amara's blood went cold. She showed Jae-min. His hand tightened around his phone, jaw muscle jumping. He made a call, voice dropping into something cold. Trace the number that just texted my wife. Yes, now. I don't care what protocols you have to break. Location in 15 minutes or I'm replacing the entire tech team. He hung up. Who are these people? Competitors. Other operations that don't like my approach to business. What approach? I don't believe in collateral damage. I don't use violence unless absolutely necessary. It makes me soft in their eyes. Weak. And marrying me? Confirmed their suspicions. The convoy turned toward the highway. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. Divorce her, or we'll make her disappear. You have 48 hours. Jae-min took the phone. I'd read the message, and his expression went glacial. He made another call. When he spoke, his voice was different, colder, harder. Find them. I don't care how many resources it takes. Bring them to me, directly to me. He paused, listening. I'm aware of the risks. Do it anyway. Make it clear. Anyone who threatens her answers to me personally. He looked at Amara. I'm going to fix this. How? By making it very clear that threatening you has consequences they can't afford. You can't just, I can do whatever is necessary to protect what's mine, Jae-min said, and she realized she was seeing something darker underneath. Something that had built an empire and held it. I'm not yours. You're my wife. Until you decide otherwise, that makes you part of my responsibility. And I take responsibility seriously. The SUV merged onto the highway, accelerating. Amara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something that made her pause. He was furious, but not at her. For her. Tell me the truth, she said quietly. All of it. Jae-min was silent for a long moment. Then he began to talk. My father built an empire, import-export, but he didn't care about legality. When he died, I inherited everything, including debts to dangerous people. I was 20 with no experience running a criminal enterprise. He stared out the window as the city gave way to suburbs. I cleaned it up, gradually, shifted to legitimate goods, built legal partnerships, made it profitable without breaking international law. He paused. Mostly. But my father had invested in underground gaming. That part was harder to extract from. Too many people depended on it. So I regulated it instead. Made it less dangerous. Not exactly legal, but not exactly criminal. And your rivals don't like that. They think I've gone soft. So they push. They test. They look for leverage. Like me. Like you. Marrying you publicly gave them a target. His hand curled into a fist against his thigh before deliberately relaxing. I should have anticipated that. Why didn't you? He turned to look at her directly. Because I wasn't thinking strategically. I was thinking emotionally. I saw you standing there, humiliated, and I just reacted. Something raw crossed his face. Probably the most human thing I've done in years. The SUV took an exit, heading down a tree-lined road. Gates appeared, security cameras on stone pillars, acres of wooded land. The gates opened automatically. They drove through, following a winding driveway to a modern house, all glass and angles. The convoy stopped. Amara stepped out into cool morning air. Birds singing, sunlight through leaves, peaceful, surreal. Welcome to the safe house, Jae-min said. You'll be protected here. I have business in the city. You're leaving? I need to meet with the people who sent those texts. Make things clear. What if something happens to you? He smiled slightly. Worried about me? Worried about being stranded with people who want to make me disappear. Fair point, but I'll be back by evening. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card with a single number. Call this. Say the word Crimson. Someone will come for you within 20 minutes. Crimson. My father's emergency protocol. Only 3 people know what it triggers. Now 4. He started toward the SUV, then turned back. Amara? Yes? If you decide you want out, I'll arrange it. No questions. But you should know. He hesitated, vulnerability flashing across his face. I'm starting to hope you don't. Before she could respond, he was gone. Leaving her in the woods, married to a stranger, being hunted by criminals, holding a card with an emergency word she didn't understand. Amara laughed. It was either that or scream. Jae-min sat at the head of a conference table facing 7 men who ran various parts of his organization. They were angry. Good. Angry people made mistakes. Explain, said Kim Tae-woo, his VP of operations. A man in his 50s who'd worked for Jae-min's father. His tie was loosened, face red. Explain how marrying a stranger on live television benefits this organization. It doesn't, Jae-min said simply. It benefits me. Last I checked, I still own this organization. You made us a laughingstock, said Park Min-jun. The media is calling you impulsive, emotional, weak. We've had clients question our stability. Our results speak for themselves, Jae-min replied. You should care when it affects business, Tae-woo snapped, slamming his hand on the table. 3 major clients pulled negotiations, 2 more threatening to walk. That's millions in revenue. Then we'll find new clients, ones with better judgment. This isn't a joke. I'm not joking, Jae-min interrupted, his voice dropping to something colder. I'm telling you that my personal life is not subject to board approval. I married Amara Okoye because I chose to. End of discussion. She's a liability, Tae-woo said. She has no security training, no understanding of our business. She's leverage waiting to be exploited. Which is why I've increased security protocols. Which is why she's in a secure location. Which is why I'm making it very clear that anyone who threatens her will disappear. Permanently. The room went quiet. Is that a threat? Lee Dong-hyun asked carefully. It's a promise, Jae-min said, meeting each man's eyes. Someone sent threatening texts to my wife this morning. I want to know who. Silence. Then Tae-woo said very calmly, those texts came from outside our organization. How do you know? Because I sent them myself to test your reaction. His tone was matter of fact. And you failed. You've become exactly what I feared, emotionally compromised. She's made you weak. You chose her over organizational security. Jae-min stood slowly, deliberately. The room tensed. Hands moved under the table, toward weapons, phones, panic buttons. You, Jae-min said very quietly, each word precise, sent death threats to my wife, to test me, to prove a point. You can't protect her and run this organization effectively. You need to choose. I choose both, Jae-min said. You're fired. You can't. I can and I am. Security will escort you out. Your access is revoked. Your contract's terminated. Your account's frozen. You threatened my wife. That makes you a liability I can't afford. He pressed a button under the table. The door opened. 4 security personnel entered. Tae-woo stood, face red with rage, veins visible. You'll regret this. This organization will collapse without experienced leadership. Then it collapses, Jae-min said, his voice like ice. But it collapses on my terms. Not on the terms of people who think threatening an innocent woman is acceptable strategy. Tae-woo was escorted out, still shouting. Jae-min turned to the remaining executives. Anyone else want to test my commitment? No one spoke. Good. Now let's discuss restructuring operations, and how we're making it clear to competitors that my wife is off limits. I want new protocols by end of business. Threat assessments on every rival organization. And someone explain how Tae-woo had access to make those calls without anyone noticing. The meeting lasted another hour. By the end, Jae-min had consolidated power, eliminated a threat, reassigned responsibilities. When he finally left, climbing into the SUV, he felt tension ease slightly. His phone buzzed. A text from Amara. Still alive? He smiled and replied, Still alive. Coming home. Then he paused, staring at the word home. When had the safe house become that? Amara was on the deck when she heard the SUV pull up. Sunset painted the sky in oranges and purples. She'd been sitting there for an hour just thinking. About choices. About control. She'd made a choice at that altar. Stood up. Said yes. Claimed her narrative. Maybe that was the most control she'd ever had. Jae-min appeared on the deck, still in business clothes, looking tired but unharmed. There was blood on his knuckles. Just a little. How did it go? She asked, gesturing to his hand. He glanced down, seemed surprised. I fired someone. Threatened several others. Had to physically remove one who wouldn't leave quietly. He pulled out a handkerchief, wiped the blood away. Standard Tuesday. Despite everything, Amara laughed. He sat beside her, not too close. I need to tell you something, he said. More secrets? A clarification. The man who sent you those texts, he worked for me, my VP of operations. He thought I'd made myself weak by marrying you. He was testing whether I'd choose the organization or you. Amara's heart rate picked up. He worked for you and threatened to kill me? Yes. Past tense. And? I chose you, Jamin said simply, which probably wasn't the strategic decision, but it was the right one. Amara turned to look at him directly. Why? You barely know me. I know you refused a bribe when you needed money. I know you built a business from nothing. I know you stood at that altar and made a decision instead of running. He paused. And I know that when someone threatened you, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Genuine anger, real fury. That's not love, Amara said quietly. No, it's not. Not yet. But it's respect and admiration. And the beginning of something that could become more, if you wanted it to. And if I don't, then I keep my promise. I protect you. I help you annul this. I make sure you're safe to rebuild your life without me in it. Amara looked out at the darkening woods. I called you my husband in my statement today, she said. I noticed. It felt natural, which is insane. Is it? We're legally married. You're living in my house. I'm protecting you from threats. I fired someone today for endangering you. Seems reasonably husband-like to me? She turned to face him fully. I'm not staying because I need protection, or because I'm scared to leave. Then why are you staying? Because I decide who stands beside me, Amara said, the words coming out stronger than she expected. And right now, despite the insanity, despite not knowing you, despite everything, I'm deciding it's you, at least for now. Something shifted in Jamin's expression, relief and surprise, and something deeper. For how long? He asked quietly. I don't know yet. Ask me again tomorrow. He smiled. I will. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun finished setting, stars appearing, the woods filling with night sounds. Finally, Amara stood. She gestured toward the house. Yes, I'll be in my office if you need anything. You're safe here. Amara nodded, then paused. Jamin? Yes? She stepped closer, rose on her toes, and kissed him. Not the formal altar kiss, not restrained. A real kiss, intentional, mutual. Her hands on his shoulders, his hands careful on her waist. When they separated, she said, Thank you. For what? For not abandoning me, for choosing me, for being honest, even when it's complicated. Then she turned and walked inside before he could see the tears forming. Not sad tears, something that felt dangerously like hope. 1 year later, the penthouse balcony overlooked the city at night, lights and movement and millions of lives being lived below. Amara stood at the railing with wine, watching the world continue. Jamin appeared beside her, his arm sliding around her waist. What are you thinking? He asked. That a year ago I was planning a completely different life, she said, leaning into his warmth. Different husband, different future, different everything. Regrets? No. Daniel called yesterday. Did I tell you? No. What did he want? To apologize. Again. He's engaged to someone else. Wanted closure or forgiveness. And I told him I had neither to give. Told him to lose my number. She turned to face Jamin, her hand resting against his chest. He didn't lose me. He never had me. Not really. And now? Jamin asked softly. Now I'm building a future with someone I actually know. Someone who chose me when I was at my worst. Someone who's chosen me every day since. Amara reached into her pocket and pulled out the engagement ring Daniel had given her. She held it over the balcony railing. What are you doing? Jamin asked, though he was smiling. Making sure no one humiliates me twice. Making sure I remember who I am and who I chose. She dropped it. It fell, tumbling through darkness, disappearing into the city below. Gone. That was expensive, Jamin observed. So is my dignity, and I'm not selling it again. He laughed and pulled her close. No one will, I promise. That's very romantic in a terrifying kind of way. I'm a complicated man. You married me anyway, Twice. I did. Best impulsive decision I ever made. They stood together on the balcony. Two people who'd married in chaos and chosen each other in calm, who'd built partnership from crisis. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. I love you, she said. I love you too, Jamie replied, kissing the top of her head. My impulsive, brilliant, infuriating wife. Your wife. Still sounds strange. We've been married twice. You should be used to it. Ask me again in another year. I will, he promised, because some things were worth building slowly. Some partnerships were worth choosing every single day, and some marriages started with impossible choices and grew into something neither person could have planned. Something real. If you made it to the end, drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe. I've got more stories coming. What would you have done in Amara's position? Thanks for reading. See you in the next one.